So today we're going to be diving back in time to 2009 with an arcade stick from a completely different company and a completely different design. This is the Knockout or KO fighting stick by Hyperkin. And as you can see, the controller layout is a noir layout, accompanied by a few small buttons on top of it. And if you look closely, you can easily tell this arcade stick is a clone of the existing one released by Hori in 2007, known as the Fighting Stick 3. The parts used in this arcade stick feel pretty cheap, and they're basically clone Sanwa parts. These are not real Sanwas. You may feel pretty disappointed at, like MadCatz for the MadCatz SC. They went with stock clone parts. Another drawback to this arcade stick is that the macro button, while useful, feels pretty limited, as you can register like a few inputs at once, but chances are it may only register one input. And there is a substantial amount of delay upon pressing the macro when that input will come out. The same can be said for the home button right here, if you're using this on a PS3. This also has some substantial delay on when the XMB will come up. However, you cannot access the quick menu from the PS3 by holding down the home button. Instead, it will only prompt in the in-game XMB at all times when playing a game. Cons aside, we can talk about the pros, and unfortunately, I only have 2 or 3. The first is the fact that this arcade stick has a really nice area where you can rest your wrist. And the other, and like, I would say this is pretty much the only advantage this has over the MadCatz Tournament Edition, is the inclusion of an L3 and R3 button. Unfortunately, by normal means, the MadCatz arcade sticks do not come with L3 and R3, because you have to have a new module to replace the USB door component from Buttercade to add those buttons in. The last of the 3 is universal compatibility. As you can tell from these adapters, this is compatible with the PS1, PS2, PS3, and PC. Keep in mind that, as I said earlier, PS3 compatibility is pretty shoddy, as there are substantial delays when you try to press the home button and try to enter the XMB quick menu, because that is unfortunately non-existent with this arcade stick. I also forgot to mention that there is no switch where you can toggle between the left stick, the right stick, or the directional pad with this particular arcade stick, leaving only the directional pad the only option. I actually tested this arcade stick out with PS3 era fighting games and a few PC ones, some of which include KF 13, Skullgirls, Persona 4 Arena, Tekken Tag HD, Tekken Tag 2 Prologue, and Street Fighter 4. The only modern game I tried with this arcade stick is Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, and unfortunately, when I tried it on my PC, R1 is mistaken for R2. Or rather, should I say, the reverse. R2 is basically used for what R1 would usually be used for. And with that being said, we're now going to be opening this arcade stick. It's a pretty easy process here. like most of our arcade sticks, this uses Phillips screws, so you can use a Phillips screwdriver or any other screwdriver that has different heads you can use and have a PH1 head out. And once all 6 screws are removed, you can now open the arcade stick from this very flap right here. You can tell it's quite noticeable from this angle. And here is what we have in terms of its internals. And as unfortunate as it sounds, modding this arcade stick can be quite a nightmare. As far as replacing the buttons, joystick, dual modding it to work on Xbox 360, Xbox One, PS4, etc. goes, it's practically non-existent. And if you're looking to pad hack it or use like a Brook PCB, I wouldn't say it's entirely impossible, but it could require some additional, especially since you'll have no room to insert that Brook PCB into it, or the PCB of a typical PS5, PS4, or even Xbox controller. And with that being said, we are now going to be reassembling everything back together. So be sure you have the back panel inserted back in, and be sure to reinsert each Phillips screw with a screwdriver of choice, and you'll be ready to go. And that concludes my review for the Hyperkin KO/Knockout Fighting Stick. As you can see, this arcade stick was actually really good for its time. Especially since back in the day, the only other arcade stick manufacturers you have that have bigger names include MadCatz, Eightarc, which eventually later got rebranded into Qanba USA, and Hori. However, looking back at this, it falls really flat as far as PS3 compatibility and PC compatibility goes, as well as the rather confusing layout for the controls, where L1 and L2 are placed as the first 2 buttons rather than the last 2, and all these are after those said 2 buttons. The substantial delay that comes from the macro and home buttons, especially home when used on a PS3, and how much of a nightmare it is to mod this arcade stick, which is pretty much this arcade stick's biggest flaw. However, despite all this can make a really good arcade stick to use for a PS1 or PS2 if you are on a budget and want to save money. However, if you're wanting to use this on a PC or even a PS3, you're better off saving that money and spending it on another arcade stick like the Qanba drone instead. And with that said, be sure you give me a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more arcade stick reviews, gameplay videos, and much more.